Hallelujah. If I can be heard, give me a 4, Bavakasha. Hallelujah. Kaddish di Rabbanan. Yitkadal va yitkadesh shamei rabah. V'amadi v'ra kerute v'yimelech malkute. V'chayachun v'yamichun v'chaye dekol beit Israel. V'agalav izman kari v'meru. Amen. Yehe shmei rabba mavorach le'olam u'lemei almaya. Yit barak v'yishtabach, v'yit pa'ar v'yit roman v'yit naseh. V'yit hadar v'yit alei v'yit halal shemeru kudasha berechu. Le'ele min kol barachata v'ashirata tush bechata v'nechmata damiran v'amah v'meru. Amen. Al Israel ve'al Rabbanan ve'al tamedehon ve'al kol tamedehon ve'al kol man dasakin borita di batara hadein v'di b'kol atar v'yatar yehelachon uchon samar rabah chine v'chasti davarachamin v'chayin arakin zana roicha ufarkana min kadam abahundi b'shemaya v'meru. Amen. Yehe shlama rabah min shemaya v'chayin tovim aleinu v'al kol Israel v'meru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav Hu barachamav yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Israel v'meru. Amen. Magnified and sanctified may his great name be in the world he created by his will. May he establish his kingdom in your lifetime and in your days, and in the lifetime of all the house of Israel, swiftly and soon. And let us say Amen. May his great name be blessed forever in all time. Blessed and praised, esteemed and exalted, raised and honored, uplifted and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he, beyond any blessing, song, praise, and consolation uttered in the world. And let us say Amen. To Israel, to the teachers, their disciples and their disciples' disciples, and to all who engage in the study of Torah, here or elsewhere, may there come to them and you great peace, favor, kindness, and compassion, long life, ample sustenance, and deliverance from our Father in heaven. And let us say Amen. May there be great peace from heaven and good life for us and all Israel. And let us say Amen. May he who makes peace in his high places, in his compassion, make peace for us and all the house of Israel. And let us say Amen. Hallelujah. We want to recognize, of course, the elders, the mothers, the teachers, the morim, the brothers, the sisters, and the children, of course, and greet you all with the words of peace on this beautiful Shabbat day. Shabbat Shalom Aleichem. I pray that this finds each and every one of you all in good spirits, in good health, in sound mind and body. I want to always acknowledge the morim, the voices that you heard just prior to me speaking, in that they have read the weekly Parsha, which is a double Parshiyot this week, with Matot and Maaseh, and Moreh 70 and Moreh Shebaniah, Torah Rabbah, for your reading of the Parsha and the half Torot, as well as for your reflections that you gave, Moreh Shebaniah. I look forward to hearing what you're going to bring shortly after my presentation and offering. And also Moreh M70, the brewing tension and the spiritual significance of Israel, are very, very insightful and very, of course, inspiring and even, challenging offering that you presented. I want to say Yeshar Koach to you and Todah Rabbah, because it is in that spirit that I wanted to present my offering. And I always, it's weekly, and this is just how the spirit moves. The spirit moves in the sense that it allows us to build upon everything that is laid. As we're, reading this parsha, we look out into the world and we see what's taking place just from reading the weekly Parshiyot. And so what I want to present today, in the spirit of what Moreh M70 just presented, is my offering, which is entitled The Birthpains of the Messiah. The Birthpains of the Messiah. This is that tension. And this is also dealing with spiritual significances of everything that is taking place. Nothing that is taking place on earth that we're looking out into the geopolitical, the socioeconomic, the spiritual implications of these current events, past, present, and of course related to future, is without significance. And so what we're going to do with this particular presentation here, this offering here, we're going to examine the signs of the birth pains. We're going to capture it. We're going to get an overarching view of what the birth pains are. Then we're going to get into what Yahushua identified as the signs of the birth pains. And then we're going to look at the fruit of what this is all about in light of this week's parashah. Because it is within this week's parashah, whether we see it or whether we don't, we're going to draw it out. Okay? It is very powerful, in fact, when we take a look at it. But let me actually start with a passage. I want to come to a passage, and of course it would be slow when I'm trying to now get it. I had it all set up and ready to go. I'm trying to pull this up so that I wouldn't have to struggle online with this deliberate computer. I'd even call it a retarded computer because it is slow. Very. And I don't mean that in an offensive sense, but it is just a little slow in its movements. And so we're going to get this moving though. But I do want to again welcome everyone to Hebrew Vision. And pray that your Shabbat so far from last night and your welcoming of the day of rest has been truly a blessing. And you've received, the favor of the Most High for entering into this very special day, this very unique and special day that Yah has given to his people as a seal, as a mark, as a distinguishing act that would cause us to be set apart. And you hear so many people who are supposedly of this faith, particularly of the Christian walk, speak about being peculiar. And then when you examine their fruit and you really look at it, well, what makes you peculiar? What makes you set apart? Because there are things that Yah has given us to do that completely distinguishes us from the rest of the world. And his commandments are those matters that truly set us apart. Oh, this is so funny how this computer wants to go. I want to pull up a passage from Romans. It is going to give us the overarching perspective of this particular offering that I want to present to you all. Just give me one moment. And it's actually the 8th chapter of Romans, verses 18 through 23. And I'm going to pull it up in just 1 second and get it to you all. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can get this to you all. Doing too much. All right. In 1 second, I will have it. Just got to get this thing going. Yes, it's Romans chapter 8, verses 18 through 23. Which for some reason I'm not able to post in here. Just give me one moment. I think I can get it now. No, I can't. But I'm going to go ahead and read it. Todah Rabbah. It says, "For I consider the sufferings of this present time not worthy to be compared with the coming esteem to be revealed to us." So what we're enduring, these tensions that we're experiencing, they're not even worthy of comparing to what is to be revealed as he says, in us. This version that Moram 70 posted here says in us. And that is a very huge reality to understand. For the creation eagerly awaits the revelation of the sons of Elohim. Creation is waiting for the children of the Most High to be made manifest. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself also will be set free from bondage to decay into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. And when we're reading the book of Numbers, this is what this entire journey, this trek, this journey is all about. It is the journey from the bondage to decay into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. And this is where the birth pains come into the picture. For we know that the whole creation groans together and suffers birth pains until now. This is what the earth is experiencing. And not only creation, but even ourselves. We are experiencing the birth pains of creation. What, Mom?
The audio.
Well, just listen. Just listen to me. We ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Ruach, groan inwardly as we eagerly wait for adoption, which is the redemption of our body. And this is what Shaul is speaking of. He's speaking of what they call Chavle Mashiach. Chavle Mashiach, the birth pains of the Messiah. And this is what we're going to be addressing today. And so with this first article that I want to present to you all, it comes to us from Hebrew for Christians. A very interesting website that has a lot of good information as relates to dealing with the feast days, even the parshiot. It deals with learning the language grammatically and parsing the scriptures as well. And so let me pull this up for you and get this to you. This article is by John J. Parsons. Again, it's taking its time. All right, let's get this going right. There we go. All right. So when you access this article, Birthpains of Mashiach, the end of the Olam Chazeh, the end of the present age. This is by John J. Parsons. He opens up with a question. Uma ot ba'echa, bo'echa, v'chetz ha'olam. What is the sign of your coming and the end of the Olam Chazeh, the end of the age? That's from Matthew 24:3. When you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4, an acknowledgement of your receipt. And welcome to those who have recently entered to Hebrew Vision. The name of this offering, again, is called The Birthpains of Messiah. The name of this article by John J. Parsons is called The Birthpangs of the Messiah. He says our world appears to be careening toward a crash. Most of us are troubled, if not frightened. Corruption and decay are all around us, and nothing makes much sense any longer. We cannot trust our politicians. Bankers and big business are anathema. The world is now facing a global economic meltdown, but no one seems to be able to account for the transfer or the theft of literally trillions of dollars. We woke up one day to discover that we were dreaming all along. Our money, based as it was on the absurd fiat system, suddenly was decreed to be worthless. And the mainstream news offers up nothing but bland government-sponsored propaganda and ideology. There seems to be no genuine leaders, what we read and spoke about last week, as far as follow the true leader and not the liar. There seems to be no genuine leaders whom we can trust. There is no way to obtain good information to make sound decisions. Everyone seems out of control. The institutionalized church has been asleep for years now, either colluding with the world or else self-destructing through postmodern despair. Thinking believers or the thinking faithful find themselves alienated from other so-called communities of faith. The voice of the prophet has been squelched and ghettoized. Tragically, moral truth now comes from a few courageous souls in the alternative media who have chosen to resist the dialectical force-feeding, yet they are routinely disregarded by most people as agitators or crackpots. In short, it seems as if our entire culture and way of life is tottering and ready to collapse. We are confused, perplexed, and feel threatened. Yet this is exactly what the world system wants you to feel: confused, perplexed, and threatened, because by this means they can further their plan for social engineering and control without risk of serious dissent. There's no resistance to this, is what they're saying, based on those who have been lulled to sleep, those who have been led to the slaughter. Of course, there is no fear in love, which is ayin pached bi'ahaba, especially since we know that ein od milvado, there is no real power apart from Yah. He is the only true power in the universe, despite the menace and threats that mankind routinely practice upon one another. Yah Elohei Israel is in complete control of things. M70 was just talking about that, even in our captivity. Okay, Yah is still enthroned. He is still sovereign. Indeed, Yeshua is called Elyon La Malchei Haaretz, or La Malchei Aretz, which is the ruler of the princes of the earth. It's from Revelation 1:5, and that means they ultimately will answer to him. Despite the pre-planned deconstruction of the United States and the other world economies, we know that Yah Elohei, or El Shaddai, reigns, and we need to be subject to the fear. We need not to be subject to the fear of man or his devices. Act counterculturally, call upon the name of Yah, and walk in faith, Havarim. Walk in his Torah, okay? The period of time before the Messiah's arrival is sometimes called Ichvot Mashiach, or the time when the footsteps of the Messiah can be heard. This is the time appointed by the Most High for the final messianic redemption and the close of the present age, Olam Hazeh. For the faithful, this refers to the time just before the second coming of the Messiah, or Yahushua, to judge the nations and establish his kingdom in Jerusalem. Here is how the Mishnah describes it. Now, listen to what the Mishnah quotes. Now, this is, of course, the compiled writings of the rabbis from around the age of what they call the Sophrim, which is when the scribes started writing. And this is about the time of Ezra, but at the Second Temple, up to the age of the Tanaim, which is, around the destruction of the Second Temple, dealing with late 1st century up into the 2nd century age. So these are the writings that were compiled of the rabbis. Listen to what they say in this particular quote from the Mishnah. It says, with the footsteps of the Messiah, presumption shall increase and dearth reach its height. The wisdom of the scribes shall become insipid, and they that shun sin shall be deemed contemptible. And truth shall nowhere be found. Children shall shame the elders, and the elders shall rise up before the children. For the son dishonors the father, the daughter rises up against her mother, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the men of his own house. The face of this generation is as the face of a dog. Does that language sound familiar to anyone? If that sounds familiar to you, please type in a 7. And then when you type that 7 in, where do you hear that language uttered? Where do you hear that language spoken? Who spoke of those matters? Exactly. Yahushua spoke of those matters. So he was well within the stream of consciousness that was circulating, except he was refining it. He was bringing it to its height, and we'll deal with that as well. So according to traditional Hebrew sources, the Pesachim 54b, Midrash Tehillim 9:2, no one knows the time when the Mashiach will appear, though there are some hints. Elohim created the world in 6 days, each of which represents 1,000 years. The 7th day is the start of the great messianic Shabbat rest, and therefore this age cannot last beyond 6,000 years. According to the traditional Hebrew calendar, we are living near the close of the 6th millennium, the Erev Shabbat of the world. So just as the evening of Shabbat leads us to the day of Shabbat, we are at the eve of the millennial Shabbat, leading to the appearance of the millennial Shabbat. Okay? So we are drawing close, in other words, to the prophesied end of days, okay, and the appearance of Yeshua, our Messiah. According to the sages, then by the year 6000, the Messiah has to arrive, though he could come earlier. This accords with the teachings of Yahushua and his apostolic witnesses. The conditions of the world at the Acharit Hayamim, the end of days, will be grossly evil. We're seeing that. We're seeing men walk up. There was a video yesterday posted I saw on social media where this brother was sitting on a cooler just eating. And this heathen, this Gentile, just walks up to this brother and just shanks him in the chest one time. Seemingly out the blue. He said that he was robbed or something and he was coming to, I guess, retaliate. But the way the camera showed it, this dude just comes out of nowhere, takes out a pocket knife and just shanks the brother. Right? So that's just wicked. Dude runs away like, man, what are you doing? And he just collapses in the street. You see him collapse. But these are the signs and the birth pains of how the days will be that will lead to the birth of Mashiach. The world will undergo various forms of tribulation called Chavlei Mashiach, the birth pangs of the Messiah. Sometimes the birth pangs are said to last for 70 years, with the last 7 years as the most intense period of tribulation. The time of Jacob's trouble, which is Et Zara Chaya La Yaakov, the first wave of trouble came from Edom. Now look at this. This is what I wanted to point out when I read this yesterday. The Gentile loves to invert things. They love to take things and invert them. Okay? And I mean they want to flip it. They want to turn it upside down because for Israel, what they're saying, I'm going to read this sentence, I'm going to come back and I'm going to address it. The first wave of trouble came from Edom, or Rome or Europe in the form of the Holocaust. The second is coming from Ishmael in the form of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Okay? And he said this accords with the teachings of Yahushua in the Olivet Discourse. Now, when I say the inversion of this, can someone, if you understand what I'm saying about how this is inverted, and I'm going to explain it, but type in a 2 if you understand how I'm saying this is an inversion of what true Israel experienced, okay? Because what we need, who came first for Israel, for true Israel, between Edom and Ishmael? Who did Israel encounter first? That's the question. Who did Israel encounter first in the troubles that we've been experiencing? Ishmael or Esau? Who did we experience first? We didn't experience Edom first. We experienced Ishmael first. This is even patriarchally, okay? When you go back and you look at who was born first, Ishmael was born before Esau was born. And Ishmael got put out because he was threatening the life of Yitzhak. And even when you fast forward into the current era, Esau followed the footsteps of Ishmael exactly in that Ishmael took us captive first. The Eastern, or what they call the Ethiopian slave trade, Ethiopian ocean slave trade took place first. They were taking us into the eastern parts of the world prior to being sold to the Western world. Before the European, and I'm not saying Esau is the European, but they colluded with the Europeans. Okay, the Arab, because Esau is an Arab as well. Please understand this. They colluded, however, with the European. And they sold us into the hands of Yefet. Okay, that's what took place. And this is where Yavan comes into the picture, or Javan. Okay. But Ishmael started trading us in the 700s. And still is doing so. And is still doing so. When you go to Libya, when you go to Sudan, when you go to Somalia, when you look in Africa and you're seeing this slave trade, you'll see who's behind it. You'll see Ishmael and you'll see Esau. Okay? So they want to invert this, and that's what I'm saying. This is how the European does it, because this is a European website. Let's be clear about that. John J. Parsons is a Gentile. Okay? So he's going from his vantage point, but his vantage point is the inverse of our vantage point. But I digress and we'll come back to this article. Some of the signs of this period include the rise of various false prophets, numerous wars, and these are the signs we're going to address in this particular offering today. False prophets, numerous wars and rumors of wars, famines, earthquakes, worldwide apostasy from the faith, persecution, and a globalized sort of wickedness that is revealed in unbridled selfishness, greed, chutzpah, which is audacity, that's a Yiddish word, shamelessness, and a general lack of hakarat, hatov, or gratitude. The greatest sign, however, will be that Israel will exist once again as a sovereign nation despite the prophesied exile among the nations. That is our responsibility right there, to become a sovereign nation. This is where we have to step up, Israel. This is where we have to engage Torah and engage this age, all right? So according to some of the sages, the 9th century work Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer foretells that just before the coming of Messiah, Ishmael will rise in power to terrorize the world. According to Yalkut Shimone, the king of Persia. Keep your eyes on these people, right? Iran is going to have a weapon that is going to terrorize the world. What did M70 just talk about with these sanctions with Iran? And we're going to talk about that as well today, here, with this offering. A coming Messiah of evil, codenamed Artemis, will soon appear on the world stage to offer a peace treaty for Israel and the Middle East. But when they shall say peace and safety, which is a confirmed covenant, then sudden destruction will come upon them, as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. This is the significance of this extraordinary cataclysmic world events, which we are witnessing this very day. These are the birth pains of Mashiach that we are witnessing transpire on the world as we speak. Ultimately, the Great Tribulation period is redemptive and healing. And we're going to talk about how all this is corresponded to what our ancestors took place in the wilderness. Because here it is again. Siman Avot, this Ma'aseh Avot Siman Lebanim. That is it. The deeds of the fathers are signs for the children. So what our ancestors went through are actual signs of what we will go through and what we will experience. And again, the Great Tribulation period is redemptive and healing, just like the wilderness, believe it or not, was redemptive and healing. Okay? And they're called Yesurei Ahava, the troubles of love. The prophets wrote that Zion will go through labor and then give birth to children. Thus, the Vilna Gaon wrote that the Geulah, the national redemption, is something like rebirth of the nation of Israel. This accords with the prophetic fulfillment of Yom Kippur as the day of judgment and the time of Israel's national conversion. Yes, indeed, it is all adding up, Hebrew up. It is the verse from the prophet Yirmiyah regarding the time of Jacob's troubles. It is vital to see the goal in mind. Yet out of it, he is saved. Okay? It's Mana Yeshua. Okay, and you see Mashiach's name all in that. Yosha. That's Yosha. Slika. Yasha. The sages note that childbirth is a time of radical transition and struggle for the baby, from the time of relatively peaceful existence within the womb into the harsh light of day, and therefore a similar transition between this world and the messianic world to come is about to take place. Surely we can look to Hashem, may his name be blessed, to reveal the fulfillment of the redemption soon. Maranatha Yeshua. All right? And then he quotes Habakkuk 2:3. For though the vision awaits its appointed time, it hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Birthpains of the Messiah by John J. Parson. Very, very astute article. Of course, I'm not in agreement with his whole perception of things, but I wanted just to provide a glimpse into an overall perspective of a matter that we have to truly perceive. Okay? And the perception of this is very crucial as relates to our redemption and what we must do to become this messianic kingdom that we have been promised to become. But let me do this here now, because this is where it gets kind of kooky. Because the signs that lead to the birth pains of Messiah are very clear. The first thing Yahushua tells his disciples in terms of what are the signs and when shall be the day of your coming, he tells them first and foremost, well, what's the first thing he says to them? And we've asked you all this before. What's the first thing he says to his disciples in terms of what they should do to prepare for his coming? He tells them to what? Not be deceived. Okay? For many false Mashiachim shall arise, saying, I am the one. All right? So let's take a look at this article here from Fox News. This is a 2007 article. This is from 2007. So when you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4. This is where it gets really kooky. This dude here, out of Miami. And I'm just going to get into the article because he is zany, to say the least. This is an Associated Press article. It was written on February 24th, 2007. Miami church brands members with 666 tattoos. What? Okay? With the 666, the mark of the beast, the number of the beast. This is out of Doral, Florida. Surrounded by a mob of news cameras, a group of smiling, well-dressed church members crowded into a South Beach storefront parlor on a recent muggy evening and got matching tattoos of their prophet symbol, 666. Members of Growing in Grace, a controversial religious sect headquartered in Doral, said they were following the example of their leader, Jose Luis de Jesus Miranda, who is claimed to be Jesus and recently even declared himself to be the Antichrist. So this brother is both your Jesus and the Antichrist? So this is things that are taking place. This is what the Messiah said would be the signs of his coming and the end of the age. We're reaching this. Critics have called De Jesus a cult leader who manipulates followers. Church members say he has brought them happiness and spiritual fulfillment. It gets better than this, though. Just wait for the next one. This is backing up what I truly believe, says Alvaro Albarracin, 38, who heads a film production company and joined the church more than a decade ago. He showed a bandage that covered the freshly tattooed 666 on his forearm. It's like a brand. It's like a sign. It's a sign most believers, most biblical scholars would shun because for centuries the numbers have been associated not with Satan, but with the beast. We know who this is. It's not Satan. It's the beast. But for the 30 or so church members who branded themselves with 666 and SSS, the initials of De Jesus' motto, Salvo Siempre Salvo, or saved, always saved, it's a mark of their absolute faith, not in the Most High, but in De Jesus. They have absolute faith in this man. This is the falling away. This is the apostasy that was just spoken of.
They have faith in the
Church members say the symbol doesn't connect them to Satan, but rather to De Jesus' claim that he has replaced Mashiach's teachings with the new gospel. Didn't Shaul say, if anyone comes to you with another gospel, that is the anti-Mashiach. That is our Milis. Didn't Shaul say that and warn to the people that in the book of Galatians? Church members say the symbol, I already just read that. So scholars and critics of the movement say the tattoos offer frightening evidence of the influence De Jesus commands over his followers. What is he going to do next to call attention to himself? Asked Daniel Alvarez, an instructor in the Department of Religious Studies at FIU, who has studied the movement. This means that his control over people is so great that no matter what he says to them, they'll follow him. And it is exactly a replacement theology, a successionist theology. But it is a very dark and wicked and corrupt one. At least the other ones are a little more subtle. This dude here is just blatantly blasphemous. De Jesus was not available to comment, to the church spokeswoman. At the tattoo parlor, one woman wore a t-shirt with De Jesus' picture and the phrase, "The Lord arrived," in Spanish. Others wore shirts and baseball caps marked with 666. Spanish rap music blared from a stereo in the back. News cameras circled the tattoo chair is artist Jessica Sagato wearing pink rubber gloves and a huge silver cross, carefully inked 666 on church members' ankles, forearms, backs, and one member's neck. Some members said they decided to attend the tattooing session, which was prompted by a church announcement the previous week to prove their commitment to De Jesus' vision. Others say they hoped the symbol would provoke questions about the movement. I mean, that's enough right there. First of all, you're doing something that is against Torah, in that you're getting tattoos. The Torah forbids tattoos, markings on your body. And then you're getting the number of the beast on you, which is even more blatantly rebellious in terms of what the scripture has provided for us as instructions to live in righteousness. So these are the things that the people are being led to, what the world is having settled upon them in this darkness. Oh, but just believe it gets better. This is an article from this year. That was 2007, so that was a decade ago. This article came out a couple weeks ago. This is from National Geographic. This man claims he is Jesus Christ reincarnated. So when you access this article of these false messiahs being in all these places, Mashiach says, if they're in the desert, do not go. If they are in the hidden room, do not go. If he says that they are over here, do not go. A self-proclaimed Messiah in Brazil casts his net for disciples on social media. You can see this picture of him here with his followers, 9 women and 3 men, although you only see 1 man in this picture, in these sky blue clothes, with him on this throne looking up. So near Brasilia, Brazil, followers of INRI or INRI, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Eudorium, or Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, pushed their Messiah around on a rolling pedestal. A dozen disciples, most of them women, live full-time with the celibate 69-year-old in his walled compound, which is protected with barbed wire and electrical fencing. INRI takes its name from the initials that Pontius Pilate inscribed on Christ's cross. His awakening came in 1979. This is a photograph by Jonas Bedinskin, and this is an article by Shana Montanari. And you can see again the picture of him up there looking all pale in Brazil. So sometime in 79, while Alvaro Theus was fasting, he came to believe that he was Jesus Christ reborn. He received a divine message in the form of a voice in his head, and in the days that followed, he decided to permanently shed his former name and refer to himself as Enri Cristo, a tribute to the inscription Jesus Nazarenus Rex Iuderorum, that the Roman prefect Pontius Pilate inscribed on the cross on which Jesus was crucified. The photos are in here. There's a bunch of them actually you can go through, Elder Yonah. So Enri now lives with 12 of his disciples. Listen to this mockery. He lives with 12 of his disciples, 3 men and 9 women, in a compound surrounded by barbed wire and an electric fence outside of Brasilia, Brazil, in a town he has named New Jerusalem. He explained his life story and teachings to photographer Jonas Bedinskin, who visited the compound that houses Enri's church, named the Supreme Universal Order of the Holy Trinity. His story, along with profiles of 4 other self-proclaimed messiahs, appear in the August issue of National Geographic magazine. And I'm not going to read anymore. You can just see the foolishness that these people are being beguiled into believing and accepting. Exactly. I was going to comment on that too. The Supreme Universal Order of the Holy Trinity. I mean, the absurdity, the blasphemy, the idolatry, the paganism that is present. I mean, this is just something that is rife. But people are not critical enough to read for themselves the scriptures and understand what Yah is saying about these times in which we're living. It's all there, boy, but the people are just not seeing it. So not only do we deal with false messiahs, our Mashiach warned us also of wars and rumors of wars. And in Moraim 70 touched upon it in his offering, I want to present this particular matter here from the SHTF plan, the Stuff Hit the Fan plan.com. It says billions of lives are at stake as China threatens India with war. These are some more border disputes, as Moray M70 was talking about in terms of, that's in Leviticus, I believe chapter, I want to say 19. I believe it is Leviticus 19, Mima, where you can get that there. But these are some more, again, internecine conflicts as India and China are now threatening to go into full-scale conflict with one another. So when you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4. This is written by Max Salvo, or Slavo. And again, billions of lives are at stake as China threatens war with India. This was typed up on the 19th. Torah Rabbah, Moray 70. 19:28 of the book of Leviticus. It says, and do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. I am Yah. Selah. So the article says this. It could be argued that there's never been a time in history where so many Americans thought that we were on the brink of another major war. If you pay attention to the constant news stream of stories regarding Syria, North Korea, or Russia, you'd be hard-pressed to deny it. In fact, a recent poll found that 76% of Americans are worried that another war will break out in the next 4 years. And 80% were afraid that we could be embroiled in a conflict with North Korea in the near future. There's no doubt that Americans are fraught with fear over the thought that a new war is on the horizon, especially if that war could lead to another global conflict. But most Americans forget that the world doesn't revolve around them. They worry a lot about that their nation engaging in another war. But they forget that there are several powerful nations that could spark a global conflagration without America's input. Among them are China and India. Both of them have nuclear capabilities. Let's be very clear about this. The largest democracy in the world against the largest communist state in the world, okay? And these have been engaged in border disputes for decades. That dispute has flared up once again as China hurls threats of war with India, wars and rumors of war. The ruling Communist Party of China has issued a stern warning to neighboring India, with which it is engaged in a bitter border dispute that has recently seen Chinese live fire drills and media speculation of extensive Indian military casualties, denied by both sides. After accusing Indian troops of crossing over the disputed Sikkim border last month, Chinese Communist Party outlet Global Times published a commentary Tuesday urging restraint by both belligerents, but warning that China was prepared to engage India in a battle for the contested land. The piece chalked up the conflict to a greater competition for economic and political dominance between the two leading Asian powers, and said that Beijing would amass troops and armaments at the border in anticipation for what could turn into an all-out war. And I'm going to just leave that there, because it's clear that these wars and these rumors of wars are ramping up. And so I want to go ahead and go to my next article and deal with that country that was told by one of the sages would have this end-time weapon that could destroy the entire world. This is from the Washington Post. The name of the article is called Analysis. The U.S. and Iran are heading towards crisis. When you access this article from the Washington Post, which was printed up just on July 19th, Bavakashah, give me a 4. This is by an Ishan Tharoor. The U.S. and Iran are heading toward crisis. Okay? Told Rabbah for acknowledging your receipt of the said article. It says Monday was a tough day for President Trump's agenda, as the Senate's bid to overturn Obamacare collapsed amid Republican infighting More on that later in the newsletter. The White House reluctantly certified Iran's compliance with the nuclear deal signed by the Obama administration in 2015. This was the second time the Trump administration has done so. I think I can get it here. Okay, there we go. It has required every 90 days to notify Congress whether Iran is living up to its commitments. Trump assented to the move with profound reservations and pushed for more sanctions on Iran. Senior administration officials made clear that the certification was grudging, my colleague Karen DeYoung wrote, and said that President Trump intends to impose new sanctions on Iran for ongoing malign activities in non-nuclear areas such as ballistic missile development and support for terrorism. Trump reportedly fumed at having to assent to another certification of Iran's compliance, which was confirmed by international monitors and the other signatories to the agreement. Key U.S. allies, including Britain, France, and Germany, see the deal as an effective curb on Tehran's putative nuclear ambitions. They don't link its implementation to concerns about Iran's other troublesome behaviors, including its support for various militant groups in the Middle East and its unjust detentions of foreign nationals. The nuclear agreement helps significantly to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, Peter Wittig, the German ambassador in Washington, wrote this year. But we remain very realistic about Iran's problematic role in the region. All right, so I'm just going to leave that there because these are the crises and the signs and issues that are lingering over us and showing us that the birth pains of Mashiach are very, very present. So there's another sign that his birth is imminent. And the third one is famine. And this article is going to hurt. I read it and it hurt me because it deals with our continent. And more particularly, it deals with our brothers and sisters. When you access this article from the New York Jewish Week, it says Uganda's Jews, the Abba Yudaya, are down to 1 meal a day because of East Africa's famine. This is by Ben Sales. It was typed up on July 21st, just yesterday. When you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4. JTA. Uganda's 2,000 Jews have long maintained a modest existence. They live in the east of the country in a hilly rural area that lacks paved roads, consistent electricity, and freely running water. But this year, the situation for Uganda's Jewish community, called the Abba Yudaya, has worsened. 20 million people across Africa and the Middle East are now at risk of illness and death due to a famine that is centered in Somalia, Nigeria, Yemen, and South Sudan, caused by a mix of factors. Number one being colonialism, neo-colonialism, including civil wars, underdeveloped infrastructure, and drought. The famine is the largest humanitarian crisis since the creation of the UN, Stephen O'Brien, the emergency relief coordinator for the United Nations, said in March. People look exactly 20 million, but this is all redemptive. This is what is so crazy, and we just read that. These birth pains are redemptive. As crazy as this may seem, and we're going to even read it in another article, death presages life many times. Okay? It's a cycle. And we have to understand it in its largest perspective and not just look at it in an isolated case. This is a larger plan that is unfolding. And the book of 2nd Esdras really talks about this prophetically. It is unfortunate that it has to happen, but this is a part of the process that we have set into motion due to our fallen nature. And now we have to go through the entire cycle in order to work out the process of redemption and salvation. But he says people look dehydrated and starving. This is Gershom Sizomo, the community's rabbi, when he told JTA on Tuesday.
People got sick and weak, and there are people who died because of complications because of the food shortage. People were already sick, so without food, they become weaker and weaker. Sizomu told JTA that the Abba Yudaya, who rely on their own crops to survive, have been hit hard by the drought. While conditions are easing now because the harvest season has arrived for maize and beans, many families are subsisting on one meal a day, he said. 2 community members who were already sick have died of malnutrition. Fleeing the area is useless, Sizomo said. Food shortages are plaguing the cities too. The community, whose members converted to Judaism under conservative auspices about 15 years ago, stays in regular touch with Jewish communities in the United States and Israel. But only one American synagogue has provided famine to the relief of the Abba Yudaya. Bethel, a conservative congregation in Pittsburgh, had hosted Sizumu for a weekend of Torah study last year where he mentioned the risk of impending famine. So when 60 congregation members convened last month for the synagogue's annual meeting, congregation members Cliff Spungen passed around an envelope for donations. It came back filled with $800. So you telling me that 60 Jews could only come up with $800 at a conservative synagogue in Pittsburgh? For real? Right. So in the following week, Spungen sent email appeals to the synagogue's members as well as to Temple Emmanuel, a nearby Reform synagogue. In total, the Pittsburgh campaign has raised $6,500, a hefty sum in rural Uganda, where a family in Nabugoye, the Abu Yudaya's main village, can live on little as $5 a day. We hope it helps, Spungen said. It's really been eye-opening and meaningful that people have been generous. When it comes to the Jewish community's fundraising for famine relief in East Africa this year, Bethel's campaign is a rare success story. Take the Jewish Coalition for East Africa Relief. 24 Jewish groups convened by the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. More than 2 months after the coalition was created, it raised more than $10,000. The trickle of dollars is not enough to even begin planning for allocations, said Will Recant, the coalition's chair. Instead, the coalition is now investing in raising awareness of the crisis through education and advocacy, sending pamphlets and UN fact sheets to congregations and Jewish communities. The coalition's goal is broader than the synagogue campaign. The synagogues were able to make an impact because their donations targeted one small community. The coalition hopes to make a significant contribution to the overall aid effort in East Africa. You can see Gershom Sizomo, Rabbi Gershom Sizomo in the picture here from 03. So fundraising has been really difficult. We can't add it. Not to mention the Pope recently donated about, I believe it was $6,000 as well. Maybe 10, it was around there, but the Pope has donated as well. But these are things I just want to put on our radar as well, because these are our people and this is our continent. You know, if we're relying on handouts from other people to take care of us, then we're really in a bad way. We have to contribute to our maintenance and our survival. Okay, we have to be engaged in that process. So just heads up on that there. Exactly. They're giving them Terminator seeds. That's probably a huge reason for it. And that, you know, they're giving them the seeds that don't reproduce. Not to mention the strife and the war that's taking place. And I do want to say Shabbat Shalom and welcome to all who've recently entered. You're listening into an offering that is called the Birthpains of the Messiah. We're just dealing with the signs of the coming of Mashiach that Yahushua told his disciples in Matthew 24. Okay. And so I want to go ahead and leave off with that article there. And we're going to now move forward and deal with some other signs. As now we're going to deal not with just famines, not with just wars and rumors of wars, and not with just false messiahs appearing all over the place. But now we're going to deal with earthquakes. Because these are the signs of the birth of Mashiach. So when you access this article from weather.com, Bavakashah, give me a 4. The name of the article is called A 7.7 Magnitude Earthquake Struck Russia and the Alaskan Aleutian Islands. So when you access this article, Bavakashah, do give me a 4 in acknowledgement of your receipt. Hallelujah. The Birthpains of the Messiah. My article is pulling up, so just give me one moment. I want to welcome everyone to Hebrew Vision. Toda Rabbah for deciding to come and fellowship with us this day. We're dealing with the birth pains of the Messiah. This article from weather.com is very telling of these signs because earthquakes are spreading everywhere. Massive 7.7 magnitude earthquake strikes between Russia and Alaska. Very interesting, right? United States and Russia. This conflict that's been brewing. This was written on July 17th by Brian Dunnigan. He says that a massive 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck between Russia and Alaska Monday evening, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. The earthquake occurred at 7:34 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, approximately 124 miles southeast of Nikolskoye, Russia, off the coast of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula at a depth of about 7.3 miles. There's a bunch of sevens involved in there, isn't it? Right? 7. So the 7,000th year we know is what this is pointing to, right? So this is huge. Hebrew Up, we do not subscribe to that particular doctrine about not representing Africa. We are Pan-Africans in this room here. And if that's something you may disagree with, this may not be the place for you. But we do understand that Israel is on the African continent. We are not of the seed of Ham. We are of the seed of Shem. But those are our brothers. Okay? We understand that those are our people. And when you look in the continent of Africa, you will see that there are many Israelite tribes throughout that very matter. Okay? Say loud. But let's get back to this article here. We've addressed that. I don't want to get diverted from what this focus is. But again, the quake was followed by several aftershocks, some of which were greater than the 5.0 magnitude. So the magnitude of aftershocks were like major earthquakes as well. They weren't just tremors. They were actual earthquakes. Don't know what just happened there. A tsunami of 0.3 feet or 3.6 inches above the tide level was observed on the Shemya Islands. Listen to the names of these things. Shemya, Hirya Island, Alaska, and the Aleutian Islands. However, the tsunami threat has now passed, and the previously issued tsunami advisory for the Aleutian Islands is no longer in effect. Originally, the USGS estimated the earthquake as a 7.4 magnitude, but quickly revised it to 7.7. This is currently the second strongest earthquake in 2017. A 7.9 magnitude quake in Papua New Guinea on January 22nd was the strongest so far this year. So you can see these earthquakes are just intensifying. Sevens, there's like regular sevens now. At one point in time, sevens were like a rarity. But now you're seeing sevens pop up in a matter of just days and months. And this is around the globe. This is just not the Ring of Fire. Of course, this is in the Ring of Fire. But you got other areas where these earthquakes are just prominent. So let's keep this moving here. More earthquakes. This one here is in the Philippines. So when you access this article, Bavakasha, give me a 4. Also from weather.com. Some earthquakes and landslides in the Philippines. These are the signs and the birth pains of Mashiach. 6.5 magnitude earthquake hits the Philippines. An 11, huh, boy? That mug will be in the water. I tell you. This is by weather.com on July 7th. And these are a little dated, but we know that there are still earthquakes taking place even as we speak. And you can go through the slideshow on your own if you like. But a 6.5 magnitude earthquake shook the Philippines on Thursday afternoon, killing at least 2 people and injuring dozens more. The earthquake, which was centered in Leyte province, sparked landslides and knocked out power after a geothermal plant was damaged. 4 people remained missing on Friday. A building collapsed in Kananga in Leyte province, killing 1 person and injuring 20. 6 people were trapped and eventually rescued, Kananga Mayor Rowena Cordelia told the Associated Press. About 17 miles outside of Kananga, a landslide hit a home, killing a young woman. Mayor Richard Gomez of Ormoc City told DZMM Radio. More than 100 others were injured in the area. So these are just quick blips, but they're major implications. When we see these implications and we see these signs, we have to look up, as the scriptures tell us. And that don't mean just look up in the sky like you're aloof. It means you're looking up and you're raising your consciousness. Okay? You're elevating your consciousness. Because we understand these times. Okay? I look to the hills from whence my help comes. It's not like you're just looking off into the distance for no reason. No, you're elevating your consciousness. You're drawing closer to the Most High. This is what we have to understand, because now this next sign, being hated for his name's sake, is something that we have to understand. This next article, which comes to us from UMass Boston's website. Why does the world hate black people? Why are we so hated? Why are we so mistreated? Why are we despised? Why have we gone through the things that we've gone through? Well, because we're a peculiar people. We're a very peculiar people. So when you access this article, this was written on March 29th this year by Dre Joseph, Andre Yosef. Give me a 4. Now, I'm not going to subscribe to every notion that he puts here in this article, but let's just consider what he's saying. He says opinions will vary on this one, no doubt. Fortunately, this is my column, so mine is the only one that matters here. The world is very clear on its feelings toward black people, but the question I pose is why? What did black people do collectively to the world to warrant such aggressive behavior toward us? From the shores of Africa to the white-owned Spanish slave ships of Europeans, from the first slave auction in America to the first lash of a whip cracking across the black back of a slave, the black experience in America has been a total and complete failure since the first slave transaction was finalized in 1619. For so long, we had no role model to look up to until Frederick Douglass rose from the ashes of nothingness to shape black intelligence in America. During slavery, black people had to endure forced labor, had to learn a religion they heard nothing of, had to allow their infant children to be used as alligator bait, and had to live like they were less than human. They were treated like animals, really. Then in 1865, the Civil War ended and slaves were, quote, freed, or sort of. However, keep in mind that white Democrat-dominated states had no interest in giving black people equal protection under the law, which the 15th Amendment would have given them were it ratified that year. It was, however, ratified in 1868. So what were freed blacks from 1865 to 1868? Residents? We were, and still to this day, simply residents of the United States, not citizens. Moreover, both the Star-Spangled Banner and the Declaration of Independence of the United States were either flatly ignore the fact that freed slaves are people or boldly advocates violence towards them. Then we got segregation, the Jim Crow era, when the southern states passed laws that alienated blacks in every aspect of life. At the time, America was covered in signs that read, "No colors." Multiple generations of blacks lived and died with those words burned into their memories. Those signs relegated whether black people could eat at a restaurant, shop at a store, sit in a public park, drink from a water fountain, use a public restroom, ride a bus, hail a taxi, and so on. Very true. Yep. Very true on everything you're saying. That was very true. So when white society told us we were not welcome once the shackles came off, we had no choice but to start from scratch. Oddly enough, enterprises like Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is just one of the many successful cities that our people had in Durham, North Carolina. You can deal with Nicodemus, Kansas. You can deal with down in, Rosewood, Florida. There's many places where our ancestors had established their own cities independent of any outside influence and were thriving. But it wasn't the place for us to establish that. We are in captivity. We cannot lose sight of the fact that outside of our native continent, of our homeland, of the promised land, we are in captivity. But individuals such as Booker T. Washington, Madam C.J. Walker, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Marcus Garvey came into prominence. What is terribly ironic is that for a time, Black Wall Street flourished economically until white racists decided to change that and devastated the entire city with the aid of the Tulsa Police Department by using bombs and gunfire. So people say there's never been a bomb dropped on America from the sky. Well, 2 times it's happened, both on black communities, one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the other in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with the MOVE organization. So there have been bombs dropped from the sky on America, but it's been domestic terrorism. They don't want to talk about that or call it what it is. They terrorize the black community, quote unquote, the black community. So we got to see things for what they are and understand why we're so hated. But stories like this echo from the past, voiceless and lost in time, but desperate to resurface from the here and now. It is probably because black patients have done the most for scientific research since the turn of the 20th century. Don't believe me? Look up Henrietta Lacks or the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. We know about those two matters, right? They stole this woman's gene. They call it the eternal gene from Henrietta Lacks. And they've done countless scientific experiments and have derived countless benefits and remedies from her genes, from her cells. And of course, we know that the Tuskegee syphilis experiment completely just was an experiment in eugenics that sought to just exterminate an entire group of people, our people particularly, by giving them syphilis and giving them a placebo to supposedly counter it, just for a little change, because we were, of course, struggling. So these things we have to really understand historically. But he says he thinks it is essentially a case of what human beings have witnessed generally over the last 500 years. Namely, what humans have witnessed is a lot of European dominance and prosperity and a lot of African misery and chaos. I don't think that we can casually put aside the role that the centuries-long transatlantic slave trade played in shaping this world's view of black inferiority, the myth of it really, and white superiority, as well as the later trend of European powers conquering and colonizing various non-white nations. But this is the age of the Gentiles. And these are the birth pains that are leading up to the end of the age of the Gentiles and the birth, if you will, of the Messianic age. Okay? So this is what this is all about. Why we are so hated is because we are the Most High's people. We have a covenant with the Most High, and we are interfering in the affairs of the Gentiles who seek to establish their own kingdom, who want to put their throne on the sides of the north in Jerusalem. This is what this is about. This is what we have to keep in mind. Okay? Yep. So I'm going to leave off on that article. And now let's get to the end times mindset. This is what we have to come to. We have to come to the mindset of being alive in these end times and what that means for us to move properly. Okay, the problems we know. Again, we talked about this last week. We know the problems because leadership is called for and needed. We need to know how to move in our leadership. And so this second to last article, this is going to be a very brief offering, but I pray that it just contains a lot for you. So let me get this article here pulled up and get it to you. And I believe I've read this before. It looks like it has been revised since the last time I've read it, though. It comes to us from Mashiach.com. One moment. Having some problems pulling it up for some reason. All right, let's see. There we go. So the name of the article is called Messiah Consciousness. Look up, for your redemption draws nigh. So when you access this article here, please give me a 4. Messiah Consciousness. This is from Mashiach.com. Okay. He says, within the culture of belief, there are 3 main elements of consciousness that polarize the religious worlds, which can be described as follows. 1, Messiah consciousness. 2, Torah consciousness. And 3, the Most High or Elohim consciousness. These are really one, but what happens is there is a graduation, okay? There is a graduation to that. And we'll get to that in this article. Messiah consciousness is what connects us with our spirits. Love is the product of Messiah consciousness. This consciousness connects us with others and to our life force. The Ruach HaKodesh brings awareness of the Messiah, Torah, and Elohim consciousness. Mashiach is the minister of righteousness. Through Mashiach, we have the wisdom to apply Torah and the things of Yah Elohim to this world. Even though many souls might reject the Messiahship of Yahushua, it is through Messiah consciousness that one can approach the Father, who is Yah El Elyon, the Most High. But those who focus only on Messiah and reject Torah or Elohim consciousness are not complete in Mashiach, because Mashiach consciousness leads us to the Father and to Torah consciousness. Mashiach is the stumbling block. Not only is he the stumbling block in that people often reject him, but he also is the stumbling block in that people think that in him is the final step for us. Not understanding that and it is the final step, but here it is. It's a vicarious step that he has done everything for us. That's where the mistake comes. They think that there is no more work required after we have acknowledged the Messiahship of who Yahushua is. That's when the work begins, as a matter of fact. Okay, it's just like when we go back home to the land. That's when the work begins. Israel's trek in the wilderness, we'll talk about this shortly, was not the work. Okay? Well, let me clarify this for you, that wizard. We keep the law because we love Yah. That's why we keep Torah. The law is not our salvation. Yah is our salvation. And because we love him, we observe his commandments. And when he sees that we are observing his commandments and we have acknowledged his work of salvation and atonement that he has given us in Yahushua, then he writes it on our heart. Then he unveils the new covenant to us. And this is what we have to understand in this day and time in which we're living. And there's no other way to make it out of this time. There's no other way to really understand what's going on in this day and time. There's no other way to endure this time if you're not in Mashiach, Torah, and Elohim. And more importantly, they be in you. We can be in them all day, but if they are not in us, then there is nothing. Let's get back to this article. So those who only focus on Messiah and reject Torah or Elohim consciousness are not complete in Mashiach, because Mashiach consciousness leads us to the Father and to Torah consciousness. Now, Torah consciousness. Let me go back to what Zakan Yonah says. You would think that this would be self-evident. You can't have one without the other anyway, because they are connected. Exactly. However, with the limited education of scriptures that most get or accept, understanding becomes an absent commodity. Selah. People aren't studying. Hallelujah, Iman Aliyah. So Torah consciousness, here it goes. That's it, Moraim 70. Therefore the Torah became our trainer unto the Messiah in order to be declared right by belief. The Torah is what leads us to Mashiach consciousness. It's not just to Yahushua. It helps us to become as he became. That's what this is really about. It's not just about, oh, Yahushua is my Messiah. No, you have to become as he became. And that's where many fall short. Because they're not about becoming. They're just about believing. If we're not becoming and just believing, well, we have not entered into this consciousness. Because the consciousness is what this is about. That's what Mashiach came for, is to show us the consciousness of Yah in us. So Torah consciousness is what connects the will of Mashiach with our own actions. Listen to that. The Torah is the link between the will of Mashiach and our actions. It's what connects us. Torah represents the mind of Mashiach. It gives us the understanding, the insight. We'll deal with this in a much more specific manner shortly. It is Yahushua who walks in the fullness of Torah and who shows mankind how to be established in his righteousness. Yirmiyahu wrote of the Brit Chadashah, or the new covenant, wherein the Torah would be written on our hearts. Faith has an effect, and the work of faith is not physical works, so by unperceivable work of faith. I'm not certain what you mean by that, brother. The fruit is what demonstrates the faith. Just like Yaakov says, show me your faith and I'll show you my works. The work is evidence of the faith. This is what we talk about what faith is. Faith is the evidence of things unseen and the substance of what is hoped for. Okay. I agree. Okay, I see what you're saying. Selah. Okay, let's move on. So again, the Brit Chadashah told by Yirmiyahu is that the Torah would be written on our hearts. For those not raised within the commonwealth of a Torah community, it is Messiah consciousness that established the link to the word of Yah. The word is the creative force by which Yah used to create the universe. And we'll get to that very shortly. The word of Yah is mentioned 255 times in the scriptures, and there are 242 mentioned in the Tanakh, and only 13 mentions in the Ketuvim Netzarim, or the writings of the Notzrim, which Marcion called the New Testament. Okay, so that's where that word comes from. Every good tree, exactly. Right. 255 times it's mentioned. Okay, very interesting. So the word New Testament comes from Marcion. Okay, let's be clear about that too. It's very important to make that. Our ancestors didn't call them that. They called them the Ketuvim Netzarim, the writings of the Notzrim, or the Nazarenes. Okay. Psalm 33:6 says, by the word of Yah were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. John 1:14 says, the word of Yah became flesh and dwelt among us. This is not only Yahushua's mission that he fulfilled, but this should also be our mission. We should also become the word made flesh. If you understand that, type in a 7. This is imperative to understand. If you have not understood that before, type in a 0, because this is the entirety of the scriptures. Our goal, and we'll get to that very soon, is to become the word made flesh. We are followers of our rabbi. Every disciple, every Talmudim Hakam, every wise disciple desires to emulate, imitate, and become like their rabbi. That's what this is all about. So as Yahushua is our rabbi and he led us into the resurrection, the firstborn from the dead, we are to follow him and become exactly as he did. Okay? And that's what baffles people, or me, when you talk to Christians. If that means being Christ-like, you're not doing anything like him. So this is what we have to understand. Continuing and moving forward. The Torah is the word of Yah. Within Torah is the word of Yah that holds the universe together. Without Torah, the world would not exist. Without Torah consciousness, there is no harmony between the spiritual and natural worlds. Torah consciousness is the authority of Yah which aligns the natural world into his own consciousness. It brings us to Yah's consciousness. The Torah does. Yahushua Mashiach is both judged and established by Torah consciousness. If Yahushua were to have violated Torah, he would have been disqualified from being Mashiach. Now, here's my question. What about Yahushua's death? His trial and his death fully demonstrated that he was blameless according to Torah. If that question, I hope it makes sense. What about his trial and his death informs us that he was not guilty of any point of offending Torah? Can someone identify that? Because this is something we need to understand, that his life was indeed sinless. In the trial and his death, that he appeared before the Sanhedrin, before the Beit Din, as well as before Pontius Pilate, in their sentencing of his death and how he would die, what of that lets us know that he was sinless? Yeah, we know he had no broken bone, but I'm talking not so much I'm talking about the accusations that were brought to him. If he was guilty of those things, how would he have died? That's the question. If he was guilty of the accusations that were being made about him by the Beit Din, by the leading Zadokim, and exactly the Israelites themselves would have killed him. He would have died according to the Torah. But because he died at the hands of the Romans murdered him, executed him. That means that there was nothing he did to violate the Torah. Because if he had violated the Torah, he would have been sentenced to death according to the Torah. But because no fault was found, they couldn't do it. So these are things that we need to understand as relates to his perfection and to his perfect Torah observance. So this is crucial to understand. Not necessarily, no. The Romans, Gomer, and oh my goodness, the Romans are the Dodanim, Dodan. Okay, that is where they come from. Now they both are from Yefet, but the Germans are the Gomerim, and they actually are the Teuton. You'll deal with the Teutonic people. And with the Romans, I'm sorry, the Germans are the Teutonic people. And when you're dealing with the Romans, you're dealing with an entirely different region of Europeans or Gentiles, okay? But they did conquer. They took over the Visigoths and everything. Those were like their last enemies that they took over. But they were just very warring people. Told Bavakasha. Exactly, Elder Yehuda. They did at one time, and then Rome came back and they conquered them. But let's get back to this article here. So again, our goal is to become the Word made flesh, okay? And we know that the Torah holds all this together. So, Yahushua was the perfect lamb. His perfection came through being altogether righteous. James stated every good gift and perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Of his own will he begat us with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. The word of truth, of course, is Torah, the book of Moshe, which is also confirmed by all the prophets and the testimony of Yahushua. Now, Elohim consciousness is the ultimate authority by which we live and have our being. But without both Messiah and Torah consciousness, there is ambiguity that can be interpreted in manifold ways. Right, Moshe is Moses, indeed. So much so that some call evil good and good evil. For an infinite Elohim to connect to finite souls, there must be a transaction in our neshama or spirit. The word of Yah is spirit. The word of Yah is spirit. We cannot utter this enough. When you walk in the spirit, as so many people say, you're walking according to the Torah. Okay, this is something that has been so mysterious and mystical and even distant from us. We think that it is just an abstraction. I'm in the spirit. Well, what does that mean? That means you're in the Torah, right? Is that what you mean? Because if you don't mean that, then you're just in something else that has nothing to do with what this word is about. The word of Yah is spirit. So as we open our hearts to receive the word of Yah, we gain the mind of Mashiach. That's how we get the mind of Mashiach. 1 Corinthians 2 talks about. Mankind is prone to make mighty ones in his own image. There is also the propensity to ride the vicious circle of static God consciousness, which is another way of saying religion, or the methodology of God without personal relationship and interaction, without Yah Elohim. This is what this comes down to, right? Let me type this in here. You are either spiritual, or you're either going about practicing spare rituals. Okay? You are either truly spiritual, something that is from within that is coming out of you, or you're just going about the regular rigmarole of practicing spare rituals with having no internalization of the act. And this is what we have to delineate. This is where we have to truly meditate. I mean, these are the practices that the scriptures tell us to meditate. Okay? I don't know if everyone in this room meditates or not, but I encourage that. And I'm saying this to myself as well, which I know I need to intensify my meditations.
Same.
I need to intensify my life of prayer. Okay? Because that's where the spiritual essence is found. We can study. That's great. I'm not saying don't study. You need to study. But we also need to pray and meditate. We need to fast. Okay? In order to give birth to the spiritual life. Very, very interesting artificial intelligence that was, very, very crucial, because that is something that has taken over. We've become more connected to Wi-Fi than we have to consciousness. And Wi-Fi is just artificial consciousness. So it's very crucial that you brought that point up. Very important. Okay? So, I want to go back and reread this sentence again. Mankind is prone to make gods in his own image. There is also the propensity to ride the vicious circle of static God consciousness, which is another way of saying religion, or the methodology of God without personal relationship and interaction with Yah Elohim. The Assyrian name for Babel means gate of God. The Tower of Babel, an artificial construct, was considered by Assyrians to be the way to the Most High. This was the Assyrian form of God consciousness. They used stargates. Our stargate is within us. It's our mind. It's the pineal gland. Coronal ordinance is not part of prayer, right? I'm not even familiar with coronal ordinance is. Is that dealing with like the auras or something? What I'm saying is the way we travel and we experience Yah, like all the prophets did, was within. They had visions, okay? And the vision was in the neocortex part of their brain. They went from their reptilian brain to the neocortex. We are part of the sun star. This is what the universe is about, Kali Goddess. We are all connected to everything in creation. And we even, believe it or not, are supposed to subdue those things. Let's look up what Yosef said. Not look up, but let's recollect what Yosef said. Yosef said in the dream that he had, which he saw in his mind. He saw it in his mind. He said, I had a dream. Abba, Emot, Achim, that the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed to my star. They bowed to me. So there's a connection there somehow, some way. He's identifying with the sun, moon, and stars. His Abba was the sun, his Emot was the moon, the 11 stars were his brothers, and they bowed to him. So somehow his star became more dominant than even the sun and the moon. So this is what we have to connect. That's just fine, that wizard. We encourage that. This is what this engagement is about. So Yah has connected us to the universe. This is how Moshe was able to tap into Yah's consciousness and cause the waters of the Sea of Reeds to split. This is how Eliyahu was saying to the men who Ahab said to him that if I'm a man of Elohim, let fire fall from heaven. It happened 3 times. This is how he prayed for rain to not appear except at his word. This is in the scripture. I'm not making this up. This is how Yahushua ben Nun prayed for the sun to stand still and go back. And it did at his word because he was connected. Exactly. It's not a natural connection. It is a spiritual, supernatural connection. And Yah has placed all this within us. We are made in Yah's image and his likeness. Yahushua said, the things that I did, greater things will you do in me. In me. But you have to be in him. He is the true vine. We are the branches. We can do nothing if we are not a part of the vine. And this is what this consciousness is talking about. It is about consciousness. So let's get back to this article. Yah consciousness for the Greeks, or God consciousness for Greeks, was man as the measure of all things. So much so that it was very common for men to be deified. They call that anthropomorphism. No, they don't. They call that apotheosis. That's what they call it. When you're dealing with the Caesars becoming gods, you're dealing with what's called apotheosis, okay? So much so that the Greeks, in terms of their God consciousness, being that man was the measure of all things, they deified and worshiped men as their gods. Many souls listen to false prophets and television evangelists who make images of gods through theological models. This God consciousness is based on the culture of self. The seminary, they're inseminating people with teachings, right? Or leadership duplicates false teachings by recruiting more volunteers to their own form of God consciousness. Shabbat shalom and welcome to those who recently entered. Follow 64. Anyone else? This is the article that we're wrapping up here. Mashiach consciousness, okay? So life is sustained through the physical and spiritual values of Messiah consciousness. But life is destroyed by anti-Messiah or Armillah's consciousness. This is what the opposite is. And we know, according to 1 John, that even during the time he wrote that some 2,000 years ago, that there were many false messiahs and anti-Mashiach present then. So imagine what's going on now. But purity of Messiah consciousness establishes love. These are the fruits of it: love, compassion, and caring. But even those most notable of attributes are easily perverted through the greed and selfishness of misplaced Elohim consciousness. Messiah consciousness has reached its ultimate perversion through religion, which capitalizes on ideas about Messiah, Torah, or Elohim, but denies the power thereof. Although all religions advocate forms of Messiah consciousness, all religions also prejudice themselves by instilling masters, mentors, and enlightened ones who stand in place of Mashiach for their followers. If you're not pointing to someone beyond you in your head, who is Yahushua, whose head is Yahuwah, Baruch Hashem, then you're not following the right leaders or the right teachers. If they're not pointing to the head and shall I say the master of all spirits in flesh, which is Yah, in the name of Yahushua, you need to get some new teachers, okay? Because they're leading you to the lake of fire, to Gehenna. That's where they're leading you. So these false shepherds are obstacles to Messiah and Torah consciousness who operate on self-made Yah consciousness, okay? And this is why these signs are so important. We just talked about that. These false messiahs, you got men saying that they're Jesus, and Antichrist, getting their members to tattoo 666 on their necks, forearms, backs, and chests. These are the days of deception and delusion. And we have to understand how this is all related to the birth pains of Messiah, because this is exactly the times in which we're living. Many Christians claim to have a connection to Yah through Messiah consciousness. However, we see blatant paganism within Christianity, which speaks of hybrid consciousness derived from humanistic values. Orthodox Judaism claims to connect to Yah through Torah consciousness. However, religious tradition has usurped true Torah consciousness and installed the authority of man rabbis, which they want to call Chazal, rather than the living Torah. And I'm not saying Chazal or the wisdom of the sages is not pertinent. It is not important, but it is not supreme in light of what Torah has provided. This is what we have to understand. So whether it be the New Age movement, Christianity or Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Shintoism, name it, each religion struggles to define itself and be established within messianic consciousness. These religions have picked up many values from the anti-Messiah, who was also anti-Torah. Now that's a huge distinction. If you're against Torah, I already know who you are, but very much pro-God. Ha-Satan offers himself as the alternative deity in many different forms. The word God means troop, fortune, or luck. Let's be very clear about that. Even the name in Hebrew, God, it means fortune. So when I believe it was Leah gave birth to Gad, she said, by Gad, I have received this child. By fortune, it is of fortune that I have received this child. And the Teutons picked it up, and that's why you see it on the back of the dollar. In fortune, we trust. That's their God. That's their mighty one. Okay? So the word God means troop, fortune, or luck. This adds confusion to the revelation of Elohim consciousness, as even the definition of God is a departure from the truth of Elohim. Elohim is the original Hebrew word that was translated into God. Elohim refers only to the might or authority, power of deity. But Yah and Mashiach provide the specific attributes, authority, and character of the one true Elohim. You better plug in Moraim 70 exactly. So since the beginning of man's history, there has been a struggle to connect to our true nature and understand our existence on this earth. There are many hints of Torah-based Elohim consciousness revealed in many parts of the earth, from Paleo-Hebrew coins on the islands of Papiti, Tahiti, within ancient Polynesian and Chaldean culture, to Indian artifacts in New Mexico, which is the Mystery Stone, USA, or to Brazilian capoeira. Both Torah and Messiah consciousness is evidence. The challenge for us today is to know the reality of Messiah and Torah consciousness, which makes us complete. We are to be Kedoshim, the saints, set apart people who are given the resources and intelligence to minister justice. Yeah. Oh man, LICL be dropping them. Boom. So, to be believers is a good first step towards the perfection we are called to live within. But we must go on to maturity and perfection. This is what Hebrews 6 talks about. We have the resources in Yahushua and the Ruach HaKodesh to live, teach, and harmonize the word of reconciliation by walking in the faith of Mashiach and observing Torah. From the pillars of Torah and Mashiach consciousness, we are to build a foundation towards true Yah consciousness. Only then can we know that it is not we who live for ourselves, but He who lives in us. Yah has established His word in us, and through Mashiach, He harmonizes all things to Himself. Let us take inventory and consider which of these three connections we feel the most comfortable. Which of these three do we lack confidence? In which do we feel strength? Based on the limitations of our own human nature, we should recognize that whatever is the more familiar to us can also potentially be the most misaligned. If we feel we are strong in the area of Messiah consciousness, then we must ask Yah to open our hearts to Torah consciousness. If we feel our strength lies in Torah consciousness, then we must ask Yah to open our hearts to Messiah consciousness. If our actions do not align with the values we espouse, we must address our souls before Yah and be reconciled in our values and actions. If we have conflict with other believers, we must also survey our own souls to see where we lack in wisdom or ability to reconcile all things in Yahushua. It is immature and irresponsible for souls to avoid conflict resolution by putting the onus of change upon others, even upon other religions. The fact of the matter is that we need diversity and conflict to mature us and prove Messiah and Torah consciousness within us. We are called to be a kedoshim, which means the work of perfecting our souls is also dependent upon mishpacha, or our family we are called to walk with. By withdrawing from conflicts or not establishing true reconciliation, believers set themselves up to establish God consciousness according to the flesh, thereby neither developing maturity and fruits unto Mashiach. We either receive or reject the Ruach HaKodesh based on how we choose to live our lives and treat others. May we each grow in the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Mashiach. Amen. V'amen. Shalom uvrachot. Baruch ben Daniel. That article to me is a great insight into what we must contain within ourselves. Okay? And this also deals with our fruit, how we must conduct ourselves. Because this article is crucial as relates to the time in which we are now living. If our consciousness is anywhere else other than in and on Mashiach, Torah, and Elohim, you can be assured that this age will cause you to expire with it. If you want to go to Olam Haba, to the world to come, well, then we have to actually prepare ourselves for that by allowing these forms of consciousness to exude within us, from within us. And the ultimate goal of this is my last offering. This comes to us from Hebrew Vision News at WordPress.com. The name of the article is called Coming Forth from Confinement into the Light of Fulfillment. Parshat Matot U'Maaseh Reflections. This is written by yours truly, Mikhail Korban-Yahu, aka the End Time Scribe. It was posted and finished yesterday. Any typos, please forgive me. I'm still in the process of, I was revising it, so, only one pair of eyes editing. It kind of gets hard editing. And I noticed that in many of the articles I've submitted to you all that I've written, there's still some typos and edits in it that need to be done, so bear with me. But this is what I pray is the goal. This is what this all comes down to. And I don't know if you all can see the first image, but if there's an image that you see in this article, the first one at the very top, what do you see in that image? What is that? What is that exactly, as Akan Yona? Those are sperm cells, okay? You see the explosion, which is the ejaculation, and then you see the sperm swimming towards the oval to seek to be fertilized. It's coming up in a moment. But this is what life is all about. This is about the propagation and reproduction of life. Bear fruit and multiply. Yah tells us to do that. But this also has to be understood in a spiritual capacity. Exactly. I made it too. Hallelujah. All praises to Yah. And this is a spiritual reality that we also have to understand. I know it's coming. I haven't done it yet because the power of sperm is unimaginable. It is unimaginable. Exactly. We do admit that kind of light too.
How does it know where to go?
It is all intelligent. It is intelligent. It's the word. It's the seed. It's the word. And this is what we're going to have to understand and see. And eventually we'll get to that. But the sperm cell, put it this way, our ancestors understood, and I mean this Hebraically, our Hebrew ancestors understood that one drop of semen is more powerful than the whole blood in our system.
What?
Because that drop contains billions of life forms. Blood is just what keeps us alive, and it's sacred. I'm not saying it is not sacred, but the sperm cells, that's the creative force. It does defile us too. It does, because life that is issued, that is not like fertilized, is death.
Isn't it the most intelligent thing?
Sperm cells,
Except
very
for-
much so.
Except for the actual. Well, yeah.
Yep. So, it begins with a quote. And this is from Universal Torah, Reflections on My Tot and Messiah by the Rabbi Avraham Greenbaum. He says this: Genesis is the head of the Torah. Now check this out. We're dealing with birth pains, right? Birth pains of the Messiah. That birth pains leads to a delivery. It leads to the issuing forth of a life form, okay? Genesis is the head of the Torah. Exodus, the arms, the outstretched arm of redemption. Leviticus, the heart, okay? It's what the holiness is all about. It gives us the mind. Numbers, the legs, raglayim, the journeying through the wilderness to reach the land. And Deuteronomy is the mouth. It's trumpeting forth. Hear, O Israel, coming at the end of the book of Numbers. These two parshiot show us the children of Israel at the end of their journeying in the wilderness, assembled in the plains of Moab, facing Jericho, poised to enter the land. It was here that Moshe delivered his final discourses, which make up the book of Deuteronomy. The various messianic themes, now this is what we have to see within this book. There are messianic themes throughout Torah. And allusions in this week's double parashah make them appropriate reading for the central Shabbat of the 3-week period of mourning for the lost temples, which is a preparation for the restoration quickly in our days. Kinot is the limitations, and Tikkun deals with the rectification. Then we begin from Numbers 33, 1 and 2. These are the journeys of Bnei Israel when they came out of Egypt by their divisions under the hand of Moshe and Aaron. Moshe recorded the stages of their journeys at Adonai's command. These then are their journeys by the stages. And if you look at this graphic here, this GIF file, you'll see the stages of pregnancy leading to birth. Right? You can see the impregnation all the way to the delivery. So, as creation would have it, the typical time for gestation during a woman's pregnancy is 40 weeks or 280 days long. This process is divided into a 3-stage development called trimesters, wherein from the time of conception, when fertilization takes place with the sperm cell uniting with the ovum, until full maturation, when a live birth delivery of the child takes place, the fetus undergoes development. During this time of gestation, what can be considered a period of confinement and limitation lasts until the growing fetus eventually experiences more freedom of motion after the gestation period is complete with the birth of the child. At its root, the word gestation is defined as the action or process of carrying young in the womb. Interestingly, this word also connotes the idea of conception and development, especially in the mind. Like Israel being the sperm going into or impregnating the land that was given to us. Exactly, Elder. There you go. Say loud. But again, gestation also refers to conception and development in the mind. As we will see in the course of this writing, the book of Numbers details what this article will identify as the gestational period of Israel while in the wilderness from the time of their departure from Mitzrayim up to the point just prior to Yehoshua ben Nun delivering the nation into the promised land. With this week's double parashat, Matot and Maseh, a wide array of affairs and conflicts are detailed which can be compared to the final stage of Israel in the wilderness, nearing its birth in the Holy Land. During this time, we have seen what can be called a most complicated and high-risk pregnancy unfold during what can be considered as Israel's trimesters, which nearly caused the complete termination of the nation. Those 3 terms or stages were 1, the golden calf, 2, the rebellion of Korah, and 3, the incident of Baal Peor. Now, if you understand what I'm saying here, please type in a 1. If you don't, type in a 0. I will clarify for those who may not know. These stages of development were, just set it down, important for Israel to go through the wilderness, because these were where those individuals, it's going to explain it here, had to be purged out. There had to be some seeds that didn't make it. All sperm cells don't make it to the egg. Is that true? If it's true, type in a 4. Do all sperm cells make it to the egg? No, they don't. That's a true statement. So these incidents, these terms or stages, golden calf, rebellion and of Korah, and the incident of Baal, were to expunge and to abort even those cells that weren't going to make it and fertilize that egg, so to speak. Okay? Exactly. Very much so. So like I was saying, death is very important in this terms of life. So when we're looking at this is all redemptive. This is redemptive. So while the nation experienced several momentous occasions that served as both impregnations and elevations of national consciousness, the redefining moments for Israel in the wilderness were in fact the ones by which the nation suffered great and tragic loss. Okay, those were the most momentous and redefining moments for Israel when they experienced great and tragic loss. It was these unfortunate moments that served as refinement experiences for our ancestors, as the members of the nation who were pregnant with doubt and rebellion were aborted from the body. As strange as it may seem, these negative situations were actually for the greater good of the people, as it is essential to bear in mind that many times in order for life to proliferate, what is it? Yes, Mom, what do you... Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm dealing with my firstborn. So again, as strange as it may seem, these negative situations were actually for the greater good of the people, as it is essential to bear in mind that many times in order for life to proliferate, death must take place so that the next phase of the development may be initiated. This principle can be seen parallel to the matter of a seed bearing fruit, a process which is called germination. And if you look at the picture to the left, you can see the death of the seed, right? So that it's planted as a bean, but in order for this life to come forth, that seed or the shell has to die. Okay, so you see it falling off, eventually bearing fruit. So again, as the outer part of the seed dies and falls off for the inner contents to come forth, so it was for Israel from their time of conception, leaving Mitzrayim, to when they entered the promised land, that the appearance of death allowed for a more refined life to issue forth. This is a reality that can also be witnessed with the matter of the cities of refuge spoken of in this week's portion of Maseh. So with his visionary leadership, Moshe proactively established one of the most mysterious measures in the Torah in lieu of the nation entering their inheritance, expounding on the command given in the scroll of Exodus to appoint a place for the killer to run if someone had unintentionally killed another in an incident of self-defense, or in the event of some other non-malicious incident which took place resulting in the taking of another's life. These 6 cities of refuge identified in Numbers 35 were to provide amnesty for those who had committed involuntary manslaughter. It was while in the cities of refuge under the provisions of amnesty that a unique gestational process took place for the person who had fled and was to remain in that state until the Kohen Gadol died, the high priest died, so that they would be free from the penalty of facing the blood redeemer of the slain. According to an article entitled The Mysterious Road Sign to Messianic Consciousness on the website Gal Eineh, it is said that, quote, when a person flees to the city of refuge, the new consciousness of Torah, and particularly the inner messianic dimension of the Torah, he must first become totally absorbed in and enamored of it, never wanting to leave. Much like Yehoshua ben Nun at the tabernacle. He didn't leave the tabernacle until it was time for him to go. In this beginning state, the Torah encompasses his entire being and consciousness, and it is not critically important to what extent he or she understands all that they study. The most important inner sense for him to develop is that this infinite divine light and wisdom has been given to him as an undeserved gift. The more that a person develops this sense, the more that he becomes absorbed into the messianic Torah consciousness. In order for his new messianic consciousness to remain an eternal part of his being, protecting him from harm and from harming others, the person must redirect his experience, consciously integrating it into his being. The desire to integrate the object of one's love and desire into his being is the logical second stage of this process. The classic text of Chassidut, Tanya, explains that only the Torah can fully surround a person while simultaneously being fully within him. Now listen to this. This is saying a very profound thing. Only Torah can surround someone, but also be within someone because of its infinite nature. This is because the wisdom of the Torah is infinite. In the case of finite wisdom, either the person does not understand it, in which case the wisdom surrounds him, or he totally understands it, in which case the wisdom is within him. As it is finite, it cannot surround him and be within him simultaneously. Only infinite wisdom includes both dynamics of absorption and integration. This thought is reflected in Psalms 1:2, which describes the happy person who goes in the ways of the Torah. The first part of the verse reads, quote, and his desire is only in the Torah of Elohim, end quote. This is the stage of absorption. The Torah is Elohim's, and it is the only desire of the person being absorbed in it. The second part of the verse reads, and in his Torah, he will immerse himself day and night. This is that meditation that we were talking about. And it is protection of both. And it is writing it on the heart of the flesh, Ima Aliyah. So at this point, the Torah has already been integrated into the person's soul through the meditation, so much so that it is even referred to as his or the studier's Torah, end quote. So as the responsibility of every individual Israelite, the absorption and integration of the Torah in the full awe of its contents and outcomes must serve as the foremost preoccupation of life. With this focus, one and all becomes entirely infused with the Spirit of the Most High in accordance with the Torah. The Torah, in fact, is also to be understood as the mind of Yah. Therefore, in order to acquire the mind of the Most High, we must present ourselves as a bride does before her groom, pure, devoted, respectful, and enraptured in love, in order to have the seed of the word implanted within the womb of our mind. For it is this unique gestational process, whose full term bears the fruit of the national messianic reality of Israel, which serves as the thrust and main theme of the entire Torah. Yet, as a divine plan would have it, in order for Israel to serve as the Messiah unto the nations, we first had to have a Messiah sent to us in order to redeem and restore us back into our rightful position as the priestly kingdom and the set-apart nation before we are able to serve the other nations, the Torah, in spirit and truth. And this is going to 2 Corinthians 5, in that while Yahushua redeemed us to Yah, he also gave us the mission that he undertook, and that we are then sent to the nations to redeem and restore them back to Yah, or to Mashiach. We're to restore and redeem them to Mashiach, who is the bridge between Yah and the people. If you understand what I'm saying, give me a 3, because that's a very important idea to understand. Israel had to be redeemed before Israel could become the redeemer. In other words, because we had fallen. 3 times prior, at least, well, 4 times, more than that actually. Our ancestors were so up and down at times, in and out of Torah, it was ridiculous. And so the fact that we had not lived up to our national expectation, well, Yah had to send a redeemer to atone for us once and for all. As Daniel, the book of Daniel chapter 9 tells us, the 25th and 26th verse, prophetically. Hallelujah. Continuing, so that the messianic reality is the goal of the entire Torah. The Babylonian Talmud speaks of the matter of prophecy in that all the prophets prophesied. This is a quote. All the prophets prophesied only in respect of the messianic era. That's Sanhedrin 99, okay? Every prophecy that came out of the mouth of a prophet was about the messianic era, and that's it. That was what it ultimately pointed to. So when Yahushua said that all the Torah and prophets witness of me, he was right. But it's still even pointing down the road to the fulfillment of the national reality, because it spoke of his reality as redeeming us back to Yah. But then it also speaks of the reality of the messianic nation in Yahushua redeeming the world back to Mashiach. Very powerful. It's very much needed, Elder. Redemption is very much needed. So as to the birth of the messianic nation and era, creation is presently experiencing labor pains. And that's when we read Romans 8. Okay. And you can even read it in Matthew 24. So what should be noted in particular at this time is that as birth is actually a matter of 4 stages, inclusive of the impregnation and, the trimesters, so there are 4 stages of creation in Hebraic thought. Those 4 stages are Atzilut, Bariah, Yetzirah, and Asaya, and together are called the 4 worlds. According to the article, The Tree of Life in the 4 Worlds, they can be defined as follows. Azilut, which is emanation. This is the eternal, unchanging world. It's also relative to the love and intercourse that exists between husband and wife, being unseen and exclusive, where impregnation takes place. This is our connection to Yah. Okay, but this is also the realm where Yah exists, because it is so far beyond and transcendent to anything. This is where pure emanation exists, okay? The realm or world of Bariah or Beriah. Creation is considered heaven proper. It is the first separation from the divine and the location of the throne of Elohim and archangels. This is relative to the first trimester in pregnancy. Yet Zirah or formation. This is the abode of the lower angels, men's souls in the Garden of Eden. This is comparable to the second trimester. And then you have the realm or world of Asaya, which is action. And this is the material universe in which we live. And this corresponds to the final and third trimester in which birth takes place and things come into action. To fully comprehend the process of creation and even the unveiling of the messianic age, the prophet Isaiah prophetically demonstrates the steps taken by the Creator in order to bring forth the material world, and particularly the nation of Israel. In the prophetic utterance, Isaiah says, "Everyone who is called, which is Atzilut, by my name, whom I created, Bariah, for my esteem, I formed him, Yetzirah, yes, I made him." Okay, this is Isaiah 43:7, where that's from. This 4-stage process captured in these words, the 4-stage process captured in these words contain the essence of all existence, which is reflected in the process of gestation. That there is a correspondence that exists between the processes of creation and gestation can be found in this week's Parashat, as Israel's 40-year trek through the wilderness is symbolic of the birth of the Messianic nation and its coming forth into the Holy Land. If you see that type of one, because this is so important, a birth, again, typically is 40 weeks, okay, 280 days. This was 40 years, okay? So there's a correlation that exists in the birthing process of the nation. They went through a gestational period while in the wilderness, okay? And this is very important for us to understand. Very much so, Kali guys. This is a 400-year prophecy as well, and it's a factor of 40, okay? And so we're dealing with the birth as well, but this is a greater birth of the 400 years that we're talking about, because this is dealing with the 5th kingdom, which will be an unending eternal kingdom, okay? So it's going to take a little longer to deal with that and develop it. So to further provide insight of this dynamic, Rabbi Hillel ben Dawi's article, The Journey of the Sons of Israel, Masay, informs us that, quote, "The 40 years of journeys in the wilderness allude to the 40 weeks of pregnancy. The 42 journeys over 40 years are a conception, pregnancy, and birth process. This birthing allegory can be seen again in much the same way as part of the larger cycle of the 40 years in the desert before entering the land of Israel. These 40 years correspond to 40 weeks of pregnancy, and the desert serves as the womb-like atmosphere conducive to growth. The manna provided by Hashem in the desert, as well as the clouds of glory which protected them day and night, and the mysterious well that traveled with them, all represent a totally protected environment, much like the womb. Just as crossing the Red Sea represents the birth of the nation, we can similarly relate to the crossing of the Jordan River and entering the land of Israel after 40 years in the desert in a similar manner. Each of the above birthing allegories works perfectly within its own concept or context. It did lead them, yes indeed. So the fact that one can see in so many different ways the same birthing themes shows its great importance. There are different stages to the birth process. For the first few months, it is not even evident to the world that a woman may be expecting. Likewise, at the beginning of the development of Mashiach, it is not even apparent to the world that Mashiach has been conceived and is in the process of development on the way to birth. Very interesting correlation, Elder. The world, including the Jewish people, just goes about its business as usual. After the first trimester, in general, it becomes apparent that a woman is expecting. Likewise, at a certain point in the development process of Mashiach, events occur to indicate that Mashiach is in the works. And we just saw those. That's why we went down those lists. We saw the false messiahs. We saw the war and rumors of war. We saw the famines. We saw the earthquakes. We saw the being hated for his name's sake. All these signs are on the scene. Okay? However, just as a woman can, Elohim forbid, lose the child at any time, likewise, the messianic process can slow down or be temporarily aborted because it is not yet time for him to come. The Mechilta says that the Sephirot HaOmer period was or is a nursing period, and that the Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, was when we were weaned. Okay? So when you're counting the Omer, that was when it was a nursing period. But when we received the Torah, we were weaned from it, okay? Then, and this is, of course, the 50 days but from the leaving of Mitzrayim to the receiving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, which is the counting of the Omer. And then when we received the Torah, we were actually weaned and able to walk on our own. So then as the baby grows to its full pre-birth capacity, the woman's life revolves around the extra weight she is carrying and the date she is due to give birth. It is not much different when it comes to history. As Mashiach comes close to arrival, the lives of many come to revolve around that time, and some literally adjust their lives in anticipation of the delivery date. What's the biggest adjustment that has to be made to the delivery of Mashiach? But going to the land to meet him. That's where the biggest adjustment has to take place. Okay? However, it is rare for a baby to be born smoothly without much difficulty that is called Hevlei Liyadah, which are called birth pains. It is for many, without a doubt, the most difficult part of the birth process, and perhaps the most dangerous as well. One of the great ironies of life is how in the process of giving life to a newborn baby, the mother who bore it can lose her own. Havlei Mashiach is no different. The birth pains of Mashiach are no different. As the time for Mashiach becomes more imminent, there is danger for the generation that gives birth to him. And we're seeing this danger among us right now. We're seeing the escalation of lives being taken at the hands of not only the state, but also from our own people. So you're seeing the dangers, okay? So at the very least, there is pain with times that look as if Mashiach is about to be born any second, only to see him swallowed up again as history contracts, seemingly pushing off his birth somewhat longer. Like the mother who has had enough and just wants to give birth already, the Israelites sigh and then are forced to prepare themselves for the next opportunity for his arrival, end quote. This unique gestational process of Israel's wilderness experience, whose full term bears the fruit of the national messianic reality of Israel in Torah, is actually the focus and theme of the entire Torah. In fact, it is written that the Messiah is the goal and the consummation of the Torah. What this means is that it is Israel's ultimate fulfillment to become the incarnate Torah by having its contents written on our inward parts. This was first demonstrated by Yahushua ben Yosef, who was the firstborn from the dead and impregnated the world with the complete revelation of messianic consciousness. To show how the Messiah is the focus of the Torah, the Babylonian Talmud speaks in regard of okay, this is kind of a reiteration. So it is this reality of the Messianic era of all prophets prophesying to that Yahushua fulfilled in the spirit of our ancestors' departure from bondage in Mitzrayim. It was the 42 stops along the way prior to their arrival in the land of Canaan that, along with their wandering years, that has come to symbolize the gestational period leading to the birth of the nation. Therefore, when we look at the names of each of the locations where they stopped in Numbers 33 and what the meanings of those places mean, we find a most revealing dynamic. Taking the meanings of the names of these places from the dictionary of Torah names and words and putting them all together, we arrive at this insightful message. So when Israel is prepared to draw out from within itself the structure of collective Torah consciousness, we will then extricate ourselves from the place of besiegement and material bondage. This is because the bondage to material enslaves and ensnares the soul by shaping and molding internal disharmony, dissonance, discordance, defilement, and depression. Listen to this, Kali God. This is the answer right here, what I'm reading right here. So through the process of extraction, removing ourselves from captivity, however, Israel will have the potential to come to the realization that we are the children of the Son. It is then that we will have access to assemble and build the house of Elohim with perfect potential through the means of our interior development, which will allow for the full measurement of the brilliance of our mind's flow to emanate in our collective capacity as servants of the Most High. To experience this, the nation must sanctify itself in order to become the living booth of Elohim, so as determined by our ability to perceive the totality of light and bring the initiation process to the finalization of self-renewal. Then, by heeding the utterances of Moshe, which are able to bring forth national enlightenment and make manifest the regenerated mind in Torah, we will be able to achieve national mastery, which is required in our development for understanding the distinctive natures of light and darkness in order to instruct the people of earth in the secrets and hidden intelligence regarding the divine branchings of the human vessel. Furthermore, Israel must arrive at the peak observation point as we near Canaan. At this point, our maturation is able to increase and draw out the passageways of order, which can, in fact, be a bitter process, as the distinctions of authority which belong to a mature leader imbued with power, might, potency, and strength of knowledge in the direction of the manifested source of power, which flows towards unity, can yield ambivalence not only from outsiders, but also from members within our own nation. Yet, when we come to arrange the energies that derive from the flow of words which pertain to our Father's divine order, Israel then is able to assimilate the instructions concerning our potentiality into a transformative agency with which we are intimately able to prod the paths of holy wisdom. It is then that Israel will have to beat and severely press down our carnal nature, and akin to the process of kneading bread, which will ultimately afford us the ability to widen, refresh, and sustain the knowledge expressed from the face of our Father and King. National recognition in terms of we have to, let me see where I said that. I'm not really seeing where that part is. Thanks, Mom. Okay, well, I'll come back to that part at the end. So, we have to beat our nature down, okay? The carnal nature, like the kneading of bread. which will afford us the ability to widen and refresh and sustain the knowledge expressed from the face of our Father and King. This knowledge in turn will grant us access to the manifestation of the waters of life through the revelation of the Shekinah. In addition to this, the flowing statements of Moshe will structure our activities so that we will be able to attain and internalize the promised stage of delivery following our initiation and awakening of the inner branch bush, which is the menorah or our central nervous system within, which in turn assimilates our collective understanding of unity. So national recognition, I'm thinking in the terms of we have to be, again, it's like a one-mindedness, okay? We have become so united in Torah, in Elohim and Mashiach consciousness that nationally we see all these things, okay? And that's the problem. Because there was no king in Israel, everyone does what's right in their own eyes. When Yahushua is not enthroned in our lives, individually and collectively, well, then we go about this private interpretation and doing what's right in our own eyes. And that's a huge problem. And we do have a king. That's what I'm saying. When Yahushua is enthroned in our life, everything unifies. If he's truly enthroned in your life. From here, from the point of the highest peak of observation, which is Migdal, Israel must move forward to the domain of the sepulchre in order to inter our old selves for the further expansion and development of our renewed mind. Put yourself to death. You have to allow yourself to be reborn, but you have to die to your old nature. This process will activate our transformation as we continue our pursuit of mastery and wholeness. Once we fully buried our carnal nature, we will be fully able to declare the truth of the Torah with sound understanding and power. With this accomplished, it becomes necessary to bind ourselves to the continual process of renewal so that we are able to rise up and unleash the white light of our purified hearts to become empowered to rule the potential movements of the entire house of Elohim. This access will also provide us with the wisdom to rule over darkness in order to prevent the ruin of the community of the assembled multitude who abide in the enlightened instruction of Torah. Then, when the mind of the entire nation is illuminated, the wisdom to express the holy signs with clarity and sound instruction, as we will exemplify a genuine concern for and care of the assembled encampment of Israel. To maintain this flow of consciousness, we must continually examine the parameters of our shared labor in full support of the renewal process pertaining to the spiritual position given to our ancestor Abraham and his progeny at the beginning of the covenant, which was established in Genesis. While still in the wilderness, it is imperative that we are careful not to overly relish in the memories of the sweet and fertile resources that we have left when in captivity, so that we do not receive the correction of chastisement which can halter us or possibly even bond us again to the potential of being reattached to the harsh enslavement conditions of those who oppressed, twisted, and tortured us. This is why it is essential for us to continue to elevate our mind's emanations by carving out a cavity for the pleasant transitional passage along the spine of every strong and valiant warrior who has the ability to prevail over the self and the world, as we are to remain set apart on the sacred paths of wisdom. By continuing to elevate our being from the base of the thoughts regarding the formulations of our bodily form, we are able to release that materialism which would prevent us from attaining the reign of our Heavenly Father's kingdom, which is intent on defending righteousness, justice, truth, and love on earth. And though darkness and perplexity serve as distractions to the world because of the familiar spirits that derive from the ill-aggregated perceptions of those who seek to ruin and overthrow those who have crossed over the natural realm and have entered the house of Elohim, we as Israel must remain firm in the understanding that we are of the Father, so that we will not waste away in darkness and perplexity. This is accomplished by storing the secrets which are to be protected and veiled in the universe until the perfection of the Spirit is reached on earth and the realization of our purpose during our visitation in the flesh is pressed together with the climactic contemplation and the heights of consciousness by which we will be able to transcend the physical and attain the full knowledge of Torah. For it is the full knowledge of the Torah which leads to the door of perfection, where all is one and one is all. And it is through the door of perfection that all initial states of nature will be conquered, so that we who enter will have the right to acquire and possess the holy lands of promise, where we are able to attain and reflect the knowledge of the assignments of unity that have been allotted to us in the light of Torah, which we have been given to govern all associated forms in the covenant of unity. And so, as Israel draws closer to the land of promise, it is essential that we build and establish a spiritual house of worship and study, not made with hands, in order to fully incorporate the perfect work of unity, so that death is unable to seize us, even if we are found in the meadow of thorns. For ultimately, we have been called to be humble servants in order to fulfill our potentials in Mashiach by entering the cycles and extensions which are capable of allowing us to flourish in the consciousness of Torah when we are found centered in the Son of Man. And it is only in the Holy Land of Canaan where we will have the ability to completely manifest life from within, which will cause all of the energies to be harmoniously submitted unto one another for our preparation to experience the wholeness of immortality. For Canaan is where our father Abraham perceived the full potentials of man, and it is there where we must subdue, overcome, overpower, and subjugate our carnal nature, so that we may enter into the domain of transformation and eternally dwell in the promised land of transmutation, in order to bring forth the messianic age of reality, finally unveiled as a set-apart nation. So when the final analysis, as the issue of fluid both impregnates and signals the coming of birth, so it was at the moment that Israel departed from Mitzrayim that the conception of the Messianic nation took place, when the waters split at the Red Sea. So it was too with the splitting of water, which signaled the birth of the first Messianic reality when Israel crossed the waters of the Jordan. It is in lieu of this that the birth of the Messianic nation of Israel, as prophetically foretold in the 12th chapter of Revelation, parallels the experience of Israel in the wilderness after leaving Mitzrayim is no coincidence. As the woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, wearing a crown of 12 stars on her head, was pregnant and cried out in labor pains to give birth, Israel has been in a continual gestation period to bring forth the Messianic reality. For it is this child that Israel is pregnant with that has stoked the fears of the Gentile kingdoms of earth. For they know that with the child's appearance, all kingdoms will be subject to the rule that will be established on its shoulders for all eternity. For this to happen, however, there is a set time for this development to be made manifest, as Yah has called, created, and formed this reality to eventually be birthed on earth. And it is in the wilderness, where the gestation of the Messiah child is undergone, that we must separate ourselves from every element of materialism which can cause an unnecessary division between us and Yah. As there were only two souls who because of their faithfulness were able to enter the Holy Land after departing from Mitzrayim, so it is with us that those who keep the commandments of Elohim and bear the testimony of Yahushua will be among those who will be a part of the messianic reality that creation is anticipating in its appearance. For it is the supreme wisdom of Yah, who is the creator and master of all spirits and flesh, who has made and established the patterns, designs, and cycles of life which have been given to us in corresponding ways, so that we might come to comprehend the mysteries of creation and ourselves. As Mashiach Yahushua informed the Pharisee Nakdimon, that if we are unable to understand the matters of earth, we shall by no means understand the matters of heaven. It is in the simplicity of this principle that the scriptures are truly perceived by those who have been impregnated with the consciousness of Torah, which will allow the seed of messianic consciousness to gestate within them. And as pregnancy is often beset with uncomfort, tumult, and sometimes even termination, so is the process which involves the development of the messianic reality within each Israelite. For the blessing of life is shared with those who endure to the end, with the creation of a new beginning will be experienced in the world to come by those who have the fortitude and faithfulness to weather the storm. As it is written, Yahushua answered them, "Be careful that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and will lead many astray. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must happen, but it is not yet the end. For nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. But all these things are only the beginning of birth pains. Then they will hand you over to persecution and will kill you. You will be hated by all the nations because of my name. And then many will fall away and will betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. Because lawlessness will multiply, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. This good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed in the whole world as a testimony to all the nations. And then the end will come with the birth of King Mashiach. Selah and hallelujah. It is my prayer, Mishpachah, that this offering, the birth pains of Mashiach, has been a most edifying and insightful offering unto you, so that you can discern the times in which we are found. And that is what is important, is to discern the signs of the times, so that we may know what we must do in light of where we are prophetically in the unfolding of this kingdom soon coming. We have a major role to play, Israel. We are the protagonists of this particular matter. And though we have been relegated to a secondary place, or even a very, if you will, even a extra as a scene in a scene of life, we are the protagonists. Make no mistake about it. We have to assume our role. We have to know our lines. We have to follow the script. We have to be in place. Because when the curtain goes up and the play commences and judgment begins, well, that is when we shall be in the spotlight. And we have to be prepared to carry out our roles in that particular capacity. And I pray that this offering has allowed us to see that. And I pray that when you read the Parsha each week, you see the messianic implications that are present in each week that we read it, because it is there. We have to discern it. Yahushua, Mashiach, is throughout it. And also, Mashiach ben David, the end time Mashiach, is also present in that. And we got to see ourselves in Mashiach. We have to see ourselves in Mashiach as this is unfolding. And so with that, Mishpachah, I want to thank you all for being patient with me in the reading of this week's Parsha, the birth pains, not the birth, my offering in reflection of this week's Parsha, birth pains of the Messiah. I believe our next presenter is preparing to come up. So Moreh Shebaniah, if you're ready, you can raise your hand. And I will go ahead and close with a Hatzi Kaddish and then relinquish this mic. Hallelujah. Yizkadal v'yikadesh shemei rabah ba'almadi v'ra kerutei v'yimelich malkutei v'chayachunu v'yamichunu v'chayeda kol beit Israel b'galav v'zman kari v'miru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabah mavorach le'olam u'mei amaya. Yit barak v'yis tabach v'yit pal'ar v'yit roman v'yit naseh v'yit hadar v'yit alei v'yit halal shemei d'kudashah berechu ve'ela min kol barachata v'ashirata tush bechata v'nechmata. Damiran Ba'ama B'Shem Mashiach Yahushua Baruch Hashem Hallelujah V'Meru Amen. And so with that, Ms. Pakar, we'll relinquish this mic. I see Moreh Shebaniah has his hand up. Please prepare yourself for his offering, and I'm sure you're going to get some more insight, some more power, some more inspiration, because this brother here has a lot of passion and understanding and knowledge. His zeal is fortified with knowledge. And so hallelujah, please prepare yourselves to receive words from Moreh Shebaniah, who is my brother from another mother, in Mashiach Yahushua like no other.
Shabbat Shalom.
And with that, I relinquish the mic. One love, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.